Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Well, I'll be damned. It's Ryan Carter. Hey, Ryan. Charlie called out, spotting me. How you been? Haven't seen you in ages. I nodded and gave him a small smile. Hi, Charlie. I've been good. Just busy, so I haven't been around much. But that's going to change. I'll be at Leo's a lot more often now. Charlie raised an eyebrow, clearly puzzled. What are you talking about? I pulled out a chair and sat at his table. Buy me a beer, and I'll tell you a story, I said with a grin. Once the beer was in front of me, I took a sip and started. You're not going to believe this, but something happened to me that I'd have bet good money against. I got scammed. I've always had my pick of the young ladies who come through Leo's, right? Well, I met one who stopped me dead in my tracks. She wasn't like the others. She grabbed my attention and made me give up every last one of them. She was in here about 4 months ago with several other ladies. I knew Julie, one of the girls sitting at the table, and walked over and said hello. I was hoping for an introduction to the woman that had caught my eye. I held up my empty bottle, and Charlie ordered another round. What was so special about this one? You've always pretty much had your choice of ladies, Charlie stated. I grabbed the beer as the waitress set it down. After drinking about half of it, I answered. She was tall, about 5 feet 9 inches, slender with that long auburn hair I like so much. Her blue eyes could just bore a hole through you if she wanted. I guess she wanted to get to know me because from the minute I sat down she never took her eyes off me. This should be my last beer, I thought. If I drink another one it will lead to an all-night binge. Her name was Lauren, I continued. We shook hands and I felt a spark or something. From that moment I was lost. It didn't matter how, I wanted this lady. Wait, you mean you fell for this Lauren right away? Charlie asked in disbelief. Yeah, I was hooked from the first minute. Sort of funny considering my experience. Anyway, I told her my name is Ryan Carter. Lauren said she knew because she'd asked Julie who I was. As I talked to Charlie, I thought about what happened after being introduced. Charlie's statement that I pretty much had my choice of the ladies was true. I'm 6 feet 2 inches with a muscular build from working construction. Tall enough that the ladies could wear heels, but not so tall that I towered over them. I've been told that I make an impression with my blonde hair and green eyes. More than one young lady has told me that I'm ruggedly good-looking. I don't know about that, but I've never had much trouble attracting female companions. Personally, I think it's because I'm mostly Irish and have kissed the Blarney Stone. I seem to have a way with words and aren't afraid to approach women. Lauren and I talked most of the evening, dancing a few times and getting to know each other. I noticed she had a band of white skin around her ring finger. Picking up her hand, I pointed to the telltale signs of a recently removed ring. She sighed, took a deep breath and told me she and husband were sort of separated. At my questioning look, Lauren explained that they were going to get a divorce after the first of the year. They were waiting until then because of tax and financial reasons, but their marriage was over. I shrugged. His loss is my gain, I thought. Lauren wouldn't give me her phone number but did take my number. My marriage is over, but I don't want to rub his nose in it, she told me. Around midnight, she said she had to leave and that she'd call me. Over the weekend, I wished I would have pushed harder to get her number. I wanted to see her and spend more time with her. Monday evening, Lauren called. We made arrangements to meet at Leo's on Wednesday. I walked into the bar and Lauren waved me over to her booth. It was way in the back of the room and was about as private as you could get. She jumped up, hugged me and gave me a quick kiss. I've missed you and could hardly wait for tonight, she told me. She said she wanted to go somewhere more private and I suggested my apartment. I told her it was about 10 minutes away. We spent the better part of 3 hours trying to break my bed. Lauren was very adventurous, almost to the point of being freaky. Her attitude didn't bother me a bit. In my mind, there's always room for being freaky. The one thing that bothered me, the one thing I was disappointed about was that Lauren said she couldn't spend the night. She said she couldn't rub her soon-to-be ex-husband's face in the fact that she'd found a new man. Despite separate bedrooms, he still checked up on her from time to time. Lauren kissed me goodbye, saying she would meet me Friday evening at Leo's. Friday, it was the same story all over again. Lauren came back to my place and did her best to kill me with sex. If you have to go, that would be a fine way to go, I thought. I asked her to go to a dinner party with me on Saturday, but she said she and her parents already had plans. Again, she left to go home, telling me she'd call me about meeting next week. For the next 2 months, Lauren and I met on almost every Wednesday and several Fridays. Every time I suggested a different day, she had plans, either with her husband, her family, or friends from work. The first of the year came and went. I thought that the paperwork for her divorce would be started in January. March rolled around with no mention from Lauren about her divorce. When I questioned her about it, she said they'd have to wait until after filing the taxes for the previous year. We continued to meet at Leo's and most nights went back to my apartment. Just after April 1st, I asked Lauren to accompany me to a dinner party. I explained it was my dad's birthday party and I wanted her to meet my family. She told me how sorry she was, but her mother was coming over to help her sort through the things Lauren wanted to take with her once she got divorced. I went to the party alone. As I started to leave, my brother Tom asked for a ride home. On the way, we decided to stop for a drink and went into a nice bar and grill called Charlie's. Sitting at the bar, I saw someone in the mirror behind the bar that shouldn't have been there. Lauren and a man were dancing on the small dance floor. She was totally engrossed in what he was saying. When she reached up and stroked his cheek, I knew she was engrossed with him too. I assumed that the man was her husband or maybe another friend with benefits, but I noticed that she had her wedding ring on. Motioning to the bartender, I told him I thought I knew the guy, but I wasn't sure. He told me that was Evan Samples and his wife Lauren. He said they were regulars and were in Charlie's almost every Saturday evening. I thanked him and said he wasn't the guy I knew. Tom saw the look on my face and asked what was wrong. I smiled ruefully and told him I just found out that I was being played. He looked around at Lauren and Evan. I told him I'd tell him about it when things were settled. He downed his drink and said we should leave. Tom said he really didn't want to go to jail that night. I smiled and walked out with him. I took a drink, stopped talking, and looked at Charlie. Damn, that's a hell of a story, Charlie said. You fell for this bitch? I nodded and he asked, what are you going to do? It's Saturday night, and if that bartender was right, Lauren and her husband will be at Charlie's tonight. Tom is going to meet me there in about an hour, and I'll have a talk with Lauren. And her husband, I replied in an angry voice. You gonna kick his butt? No, nothing like that. He hasn't done anything wrong. It's all on Lauren. Why does your brother need to be there? If I go alone, there might be trouble. If there are two of us, Evan might just listen to me instead of fighting. I hope so, I said. I'll go with you, Charlie offered. I want to see the end to this story. I nodded, and we drove to Charlie's. My brother was sitting at the bar when we came in. Evan and Lauren were at the same table. I was worried about her seeing me before I could get close to her, but she had eyes only for her husband. I got a drink and walked toward the two sitting at the table, trailed by Tom and Charlie. When we got to the table, Lauren looked up and saw me. I always thought it was just a figure of speech that someone's face went white. Lauren's face went pasty white and her eyes opened wide. She didn't know what to do. Hi, Lauren. Why don't you introduce me to your friend? She was speechless, and when she did try to talk, she stammered and stuttered. Evan saw his wife's reaction and started to stand up. Don't get up on my account, I said. I'm Ryan Carter, a friend of Lauren's. Evan looked from Lauren to me and back again. Then he noticed Tom and Charlie as they stepped up beside me. Look, Evan, I don't want any trouble. That's why these two are with me, I said, pointing to Tom and Charlie. I've got a few things to say, and I'd like to do it without trouble if I can. Okay. He nodded and sat back down. Evan wasn't really happy, but he seemed to be willing to listen to what I had to say. Turning to Lauren, I said, Evan's a good-looking guy. He doesn't look anything at all like you described him. He's not fat, obese I think you called him, and he's not sweating like a pig. Doesn't dress like a slob either. Maybe I misunderstood you. I held up my hand to Evan as he started to interrupt. A few more things, Evan, then I'll be done. Okay. He hesitated and then nodded again. I notice you're wearing your wedding ring this time, Lauren. What was it you told me? Oh yeah. You said you couldn't stand to wear it because it reminded you of your husband. Ryan, please don't. Lauren started, but I spoke louder and kept talking. I heard you tell Evan you loved him as I was walking over. Guess things at home must not be as bad as you told me. Last Saturday night in here, you were so tied up in Evan that you didn't notice me at the bar. Did you? Lauren had tears running down her cheeks. She shook her head no at my question. Evan, what does Lauren do on Wednesdays and Fridays? At least what does she tell you she's doing? Wednesdays she spends with her mother, and sometimes on Fridays she stops with her coworkers for dinner and drinks, he replied. Looking at Lauren, I could see the suspicion building in his eyes. That's what she told you? Not waiting for an answer, I said. Several Fridays and almost every Wednesday for the last, 4 months? Lauren has come to my apartment and screwed my brains out. Evan's face turned red with anger, and he almost stood. Then he sort of fell back onto his chair. He looked at Lauren and then at me. He saw by the look on her face that I was telling the truth. Why? He asked. Why did I tell you, or why did she do it? I can't answer for Lauren, but for 6 months, she's been telling me that you two were getting a divorce. That she was still with you for tax and financial reasons. Lauren said that she and I would be together when the divorce came through. I felt sorry for the guy. He was in love with a wife that was a side chick for another man. Lauren, I didn't come over here to get back at you or to get revenge. I came over here because Evan deserves to know what a bitch in 304 you are. He deserves to know before he invests any more time in you. Turning back to Evan, I said, I'm sorry you had to find out like this, but if it were me, I'd want to know what kind of woman she is. I'm sorry for my part in all of this. Motioning to Tom and Charlie, I turned and walked away. I looked back when I got to the door. Evan was talking heatedly to Lauren as she sat there and cried. Back at Leo's, Tom, Charlie, and I got a beer. Tapping his bottle against mine, Tom said, someone had to stop her, Ryan. If she hadn't have latched on to you, it would have been another guy. I'm proud of you. Looking at my brother, I shook my head. I'm so screwed, I said. What? Tom asked. Why would you say that? I'm still in love with the bitch, I replied. It's been 3 weeks to the day since I confronted Gilliam, Ryan Carter thought. Time to come back to life. I have to admit I was falling in love with the bitch. Although I felt good after outing her to her husband, Evan, I guess I still went into a funk. I remember that first week was the toughest. I mean, missing work and sitting home feeling hurt and sorry for myself. Going back to work the second week was the best thing I could have done. At least I didn't think about Gilliam for a few hours. You can't run heavy equipment with your mind on something else. This week has been the best so far, he thought. I realized that I was better off to be away from Lauren. It was only a matter of time before the whole thing would have blown up. Better to have happened now than later. If I'd been with her much longer, I would have really been in love. Hell with this, I said to myself. I'm going to Leo's for a beer or two. The first person I saw was my friend Charlie sitting at the bar drinking a beer. Good friend, I thought. He went with me to confront Lauren and to protect my back in case Evan got bent out of shape. Charlie hadn't seen me yet, and I sort of snuck up behind him. Motioning to the barmaid, Tina, for 2 more beers, I tapped Charlie on his right shoulder. When he turned around to see who it was, I slipped into the bar stool on his left. He turned back and saw me and the fresh beer in front of him. Speak of the devil, Charlie said. I was just thinking about you. Yeah, well, here I am, I replied. At least what's left of me. Still hootin', huh? Not so much anymore. Think I'm about over with feeling sorry for myself. Touching bottles together, I said, here's to suckers everywhere, and may I never be one again. We finished our beer, and before I could order another round, Tina set 2 more in front of us. These 2 are on the house, she said. I gave her a questioning look. Thanks, but why? You deserve a break after what that bitch did, Tina replied. Yes, I know all about it. I knew about it while you were running with that bitch. Julie told me. She looked at me for a few seconds as if trying to decide something. Then she said, in fact, Julie set you up. Really? I asked. Yep. I didn't figure it was any of my business. I mean, you were running around with a married woman and all. Why would Julie do that? I thought we were friends, or at least not enemies. She told me that you were getting what you deserved after tossing her aside. Was the term she used? Tina paused and added, I didn't know the scam that Gilliam was pulling on you, though. She smiled, hence the free beer. Just don't expect any more. Okay. I never tossed Julie aside, I replied, defending myself. We went out 2 or 3 times, but she wanted a relationship leading to marriage, and I wasn't ready for that. In fact, she mentioned wanting to get married on our 3rd date, I explained. I told her then that I liked her, but I wasn't ready for that type of commitment. Taking a drink from my beer, I added, we kissed and hugged goodbye that night, and we didn't date again. I had no idea she was upset. I mean, she was always friendly when we ran into each other. I guess she wasn't as okay with your decision as you thought, Charlie said. Nodding at Tina, he ordered 2 more beers. Toasting Charlie with the new beer, I heard from behind me, Can I talk to you for a minute? Turning, I saw Lauren's husband, Evan, standing there. Behind him stood 2 really big dudes. What do you want, Evan? Outside if you're willing, he suggested. This needs to be a private conversation. I guess Evan wants some payback, I thought as I stood and nodded toward the back door. No need to break up, Leos. Charlie stood too and started to follow us. Stay here, Charlie. This is on me. You shouldn't get involved, I ordered. Turning to Tina, I said, give him another beer. I'll be right back. At least I hope so, I thought. Outside, behind the bar, I put the wall at my back and faced the 3 men. Evan stood about 6 feet away, flanked by his 2 friends. I knew I could take Evan, one-on-one. He was 6 feet 2 inches, just like me, but I outweighed him by maybe 15 pounds. He had blonde hair and light-colored eyes just like me, I thought. Maybe that was what attracted Lauren in the first place. Evan was in decent shape, but it was the gym type of shape. I knew he worked at a desk all day. I worked construction and my muscles were from hard work. I had no doubt that I could handle Evan. It was his two friends that were the problem. Bob and Sam, I found out their names later, were really big guys. They both topped 6 feet 6 inches and probably weighed 600 pounds between them. Really big, really mean-looking, and really seemed to be good friends with Evan. Okay, let's get this over with, I said, putting my hands up in a fighting stance. Get what over with? Evan asked. If you want a piece of me, then let's party, I replied. Evan smiled. You got it all wrong, Ryan. I just want to talk. Feeling foolish, I stood up straight and asked, about what? Looking at me as if I was brain dead, he asked, now what could we possibly have to talk about? He paused and said, Lauren and you, what about these two? I was still suspicious about his motive. Remember when you braced me at my table? I nodded. You had two guys with you because you wanted to talk to me and didn't want any trouble. Well, I brought Bob and Sam for the same reason. I came to talk to you and didn't want you going ballistic on me, Evan explained. Okay. I paused for a few seconds, relieved that I didn't have to dance with Bob and Sam. What do you want to know? Tell me about you and Lauren. Tell me about the whole thing. You sure you want to hear it? Evan nodded. Then I nodded. I met Lauren in Leo's one night. She was sitting with Julie, a girl that I knew. Lauren looked hot and I wanted to meet her. I paused to see how Evan took this. He didn't react, so I resumed talking. Julie introduced us and we hit it off. I've just found out that Julie set me up, but that's another story altogether. I stopped for a few seconds. Look, if we're not going to fight, let's go back inside and get a beer, I suggested. The four of us went back inside and sat at a booth in the back. It would give us some privacy. I motioned for a round from Tina, and Charlie brought them over and joined me. I made the introductions and Charlie sat up straight, pushed his chest out and tried to appear tough. Take it easy, Rambo, I told him. It's all good. Evan just wants to talk. Charlie slumped back into his seat, relieved that he didn't have to go up against Bob and Sam. Turning back to Evan, I explained about dating Lauren. I did get a little suspicious about only being able to see her on Wednesdays and Fridays. Looking at Evan, I weighed whether I should say any more. He could tell I was thinking about something and waited for me to continue. Oh, what the hell? I thought. Like I said, I was suspicious, but I accepted her reasoning. She said that though you guys were essentially separated, that she wouldn't feel right rubbing your nose in the fact that she'd moved on and found somebody else. Shaking my head, I said, what a crock. I thought she was being kind and considerate. Hesitating for a few seconds, I added, but the real reason I believed her was that I'd fallen in love with her. Evan was quiet for a minute after I finished. She's an easy one to love, he agreed. I trusted she was visiting her mother and going out with friends from work for the same reason. I loved her. So it's really none of my business, but where are you guys at now? It was morbid curiosity on my part. Evan gave me a small smile. For the last 3 weeks, things have been a little tense around our house. She's been apologizing and saying all the stuff you'd expect. You know, it was only a fling, it was only sex. I am the one she loves, and you don't mean anything to her. He looked at me after saying that last part, then smiled and added, sorry, but that's what she said. I returned his grin. That's okay. I probably deserve that. I meant what I said that night. I'm sorry, and I didn't know she was playing me. I would have never been with her if I knew she was still married. Hope you guys can work through it and be happy. There's not a snowball's chance in hell of me getting through it, Evan said in a low voice. The bitch doesn't know it, but she's out the door as soon as I get home. I looked surprised because I thought he was talking to me for some kind of closure. He went on, I would have, gotten over a one-night stand. Too much alcohol, and letting herself go too far, I could have lived with. But I can't forgive or forget an ongoing, premeditated affair. The bitch is toast. Evan turned to Bob and Sam. You guys can go on home. Thanks for your help. I'm going to have one more drink with Ryan and then go throw her out the door. He ordered another round, but I opted for coffee. I've been drinking too much lately, and I don't want to spend another night wrapped around the porcelain throne, I explained with a grin. Yeah, know what you mean. I've had a few of those nights over the last 3 weeks. We talked again for about 5 to 10 minutes. When he stood to leave, he said, come out to my car. I've got something that belongs to you. I followed him to his car. He reached inside for something, turned and handed me one of my shirts. It had been washed, ironed, and was neatly folded. I think this is yours, Evan said. It was my shirt. Lauren had spilled something on her blouse at my house one evening. I put her blouse in the washing machine and then into the dryer. She didn't need it for the next hour or so anyway. The dryer didn't work for some reason, so I loaned her my shirt so she wouldn't have to wear her wet blouse home. Yeah, it's mine. I looked at the shirt and started to ask, do you know how? He interrupted me. Yes, she told me about it. By the way, I've got something else for you. I was looking down at my shirt and never saw the punch that knocked me on my butt. Evan looked down at me. I had to do that. If for no other reason but pride, I had to do that. Extending my hand, I motioned for Evan to help me up. On my feet, I said, I deserved that, I guess. I smiled at him and wiped the blood off my mouth. I owed you that one, but don't try it again. We shook hands. He got into his car and drove away. To throw the bitch to the curb, I guess. I went back into Leo's. Charlie was back at the bar, and I sat down next to him. I was rubbing my jaw when he looked over at me. Damn, what happened? A little payback, I guess you could call it, I replied. Tina walked over and asked, beer? Bourbon. Straight up, I answered. Then I'm going home. I've had enough fun for tonight. 2 weeks later, I was in Leo's for my usual Friday night visit. I would have a bourbon, then a beer, and switch to coffee or soda. The spell had been broken, and I was getting on with my life. I would meet some friends, maybe dance a little, and in general just have a good time. The big difference was that I didn't try to hook up with any of the lovelies I met. My heart just wasn't in it, I guess. Tina was on duty this evening, so I sat at the bar. Without my having to order, she brought over the first of the bourbons. You up to anything special tonight? She asked unexpectedly. I shook my head no, and she said, I get off in another hour and thought we might go get a bite or something. Looking at her, I saw a small grin. I said, you've never shown any interest before. In fact, you turned me down the 2 times I asked you for a date. Why the change of heart? I guess because of what happened with Lauren. I mean, how Julie set you up made me think, Tina replied. She told me after it was over that you didn't know the truth, that you didn't know that Lauren was just out for a little fun. So, I talked to a couple of girls that you've dated before and you received high marks from them. Pretty much all of them said you were a good guy. Funny, attentive, and honest about your intentions. She handed me a cup of coffee, replacing the bourbon I had downed when she first asked me out. You won't be needing a second bourbon, she said with a smirk. After I heard about you confronting Lauren and tipping off her husband about what was going on, I figured you deserved another chance. So, what do you say, big guy? I took a sip of the coffee and smiled. I think I'd better stay sober for our date, I replied. That was 8 months ago. Since then, I guess I've overcome what people like to call commitment issues. Looking back, I don't think I had a problem with commitment. I just hadn't met the right person yet. Until Tina. Now, here I stand, my brother Tom by my side, as I turn to watch Tina gracefully walking down the aisle in her wedding dress. Her smile radiates joy, and my chest tightens with emotion. Sometimes, doing the right thing leads the right thing straight to you. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.